Hello there, I'm Isabel, and for the past 9 months, I've been on a journey to learn how to create my own 3D models for 3D printing. Although I have a good amount of experience with clay sculpting, learning to sculpt digitally has been quite an adventure. I made a lot of mistakes, but I learned a lot along the way. So let me take you through every step I follow to design, sculpt, print, and paint a model from scratch. With that being said, it's time for a little crafting magic. Before even starting to sculpt, I need to come up with a design. So let's do some sketches. I'll be sketching on my iPad using an app called Procreate. As you can see, I tried slightly different shapes and proportions before choosing the final one. The sketch doesn't have to be pretty. The important thing is to get your ideas out on paper first, because it's a lot faster to try out ideas in 2D than it is to do in 3D. For the purpose of this video, I'm doing a very simple design, and if you're a beginner at 3D modeling, I would recommend doing the same. I would also recommend using shapes like spheres, cylinders, cubes, and cones in your design, which are the default shapes in sculpting softwares. Alrighty, I'm happy with my finished design. I mean, I'm very biased, but I think it's pretty adorable. Before moving on to the sculpting phase, you want to take a good look at your design and try to pinpoint things that could cause problems when sculpting or printing. When you're just starting out, it's hard to know what to look for. So I wrote a design assessment list to help anticipate potential problems. It's part of a complete step-by-step guide that is up on my website. The link will be in the description. I go over the basics in this video, but the step-by-step guide is a lot more detailed. The final model will also be available on my website for free. I've printed my fair shares of models from Thingiverse, so this is my way of giving back. So let's go back to my design. The only thing I can see that will need adjusting is this thin part of the leaf. I will need to make it thicker when I sculpt it, so I won't have a super fragile piece that might snap off after printing. Alright, now let's start 3D modeling. To make this model, I'll be using an app called Nomad, but you can use any 3D software you like. In general, you want to start by roughly blocking the shapes of your design, then go in and add more details afterwards. This is gonna go super smoothly because I can sculpt directly on top of my concept sketch. To create the pure shape of the body, I'll use 2 spheres and use the drag tool to adjust the shapes. I also have the symmetry activated, so if I pull on one side, that gets mirrored on the opposite side. Then I'll add another sphere for the wings, stretch and scale it, then mirror it on the left using a repeater layer. For the stem, I used the tube tool. Dis ça vite 3 fois. Tube tool. And fiddle with that until I was happy with the shape. Then added another mirrored sphere for the eyes. I'm gonna speed through the rest of the sculpting process because I want to focus more on the print preparation, because that was mostly what I had trouble finding information for. And it really doesn't matter which 3D modeling software you're using or how you go about it, as long as you can export your model as an STL or as a OPG when you're done. Sculpting the model is the most challenging part of the process, so take your time and be patient. Patience is especially important if you are a beginner, because building a model is one thing, but building your model while learning a new software can be really daunting and frustrating. I'd suggest following along a couple of tutorial videos so you can get familiar with the interface and the tools. Then try making a few simple models on your own. For step-by-step tutorials on how to use Nomad Sculpt, I would suggest checking out Dave Farid's channel. There's a lot of great videos on there. Honestly, he's like Bob Ross, but for 3D modeling. If you don't have a tablet, there's a lot of 3D softwares available for computers like Blender, which is free, and there's tons and tons of tutorials for it here on YouTube. Anyways, let's finish sculpting this model. Alrighty, I'm all done sculpting and this is what it looks like. Isn't it cute? It's gonna make such a cute print. So let's get this model print ready. First, I'm gonna make a copy of the entire model, so if ever I screw up or need to go back, I still have the original. I'm planning to print the bird in 2 separate pieces, so one piece will be the bird's body, and the second piece will be the leaf and the stem. That way, it'll be easier to paint when I print it. So I'm gonna merge the eyes and beak with the body, and make that into one single mesh. Then I'm gonna merge the leaf and the stem together into a single mesh as well. Next, I'm gonna clone the bird's body, then use it to trim the leaf stem so both mesh sit flush on top of another. You can better see what I mean with the X-ray mode. Here's the before and after. The shapes are not overlapping anymore, which is what we want. Then I'm gonna add a key. I don't know if there's a key shape that's standard or works best, but I just use cubes and it works fine. So I'm gonna position the cube under the leaf stem like so. The placement looks good and so does the size. I'm gonna duplicate my cube, select the new cube, and make it slightly bigger. I'm gonna use the bigger cube to cut out the keyhole, so this part can be a bit tricky because you don't want to make it too loose or too tight. Now I'm gonna merge the smaller cube with the leaf stem and cut out the larger cube from the bird's body. Now I have a perfectly fitted key. Let's continue. The next step is to scale the model to its print size. And this might be a little silly, but I'm gonna zoom in or out on my iPad until it's the size I like. Take a ruler, measure the height, and in this case it's 70 millimeters. I'm gonna add a 70 millimeter. Oh my god, what idea. I'm gonna add a 70 millimeter cube, then select my model and scale it to match the height of the cube. You can also rescale your model in your slicing software, but it's better to do it here. So if ever you need to modify your design after printing, you won't have to do it again. Okay, on to the last print prep step. A 3D object is made from a mesh. That mesh is made from little square or triangle, also called polygons. So if you have a low number of polygons, your mesh will look rough or blocky, which is not ideal if you want a nice and smooth print. We also don't want too many polygons because it will make your file bigger and slower, and it's basically unnecessary. I've not really found a lot of information on best practice for the number of polygons you need for 3D printing. Since every model is different, its number of polygons will also be different. So I tried to find a happy middle where I have just the right amount of polygons that I need for the size I'm printing at. Here's a trick to determine if you need to adjust the polygon count or not. Like I did earlier, zoom in or out on the screen until the model is the size it will be printed at. Then check the polygon count and switch to the wire view to display the mesh. If the mesh is too dense, you'll need to decimate the mesh. And basically what that does is it reduces the amount of polygons. I set it to above 95% and then slowly decimate again and again until the mesh isn't so dense. If you start to lose detail and the mesh gets rough, that means you've gone too far. So you want to stop just before that happens, so you still have all your details and your shape stays smooth. And And that's it, the model is complete. You can export it as an STL or whichever file type you need. If you have multiple pieces like I do, you'll need to export each one separately. I have Dropbox set up on my iPad, so I just save the file in there and it will sync on my computer. Moving on to the next step. To print my model, I first need to convert the files into a format that my 3D printer can understand. For that, I'll use a slicing software. I'm printing on a resin printer, so I'll use Chitubox Basic to slice my model. The software slices the model into thin layers, basically like a loaf of bread, allowing the printer to build it up one layer at a time. Because resin is expensive, I'm gonna hollow out the bird's body so I can save a couple of dollars. Then add a few holes so the resin can drain. I like to make larger holes at the bottom so I can insert small UV LEDs to help cure the inside of the model. Then I'll generate the support. Speaking of support, if you would like to support me, you can do so by liking this video or subscribing to the channel. I would also appreciate it if you take a look at my other models in my shop and subscribe to the newsletter to be updated on new products or videos. I'll slice and export the file on a USB stick. I like to add the exposure time and bottom exposure time in the file name, so in the future if I want to reprint it, I know what setting I used. Hit save and we're ready to print. Oh, and by the way, you don't need to buy a 3D printer to print your models. A lot of libraries have 3D printers. I think they charge a small fee, but it's a lot cheaper than buying a whole machine, and it's great if you don't have the space for it too. So let's start printing. I'm printing on an Elegoo Saturn 3 with Elegoo waterwash resin. I already had some resin in my machine, so I just added a bit more and then set the machine to print. A couple of hours later, the print is all done. I have a magnetic plate installed, so I can just pop it off. It looks like a successful print, so off camera I'll take off the supports and wash the excess resin, then let it dry for a bit and then cure it under the UV light for a couple of minutes. We're almost done, on to the final step. I'll have to sand off the support marks. There's also a bit of layer shifting that happened on the back, but I can easily fix that with a bit of sanding. The leaf printed perfectly, I'll just need to sand off the support marks. This is my favorite part, when you check that the pieces all fit together. It's also super rewarding to see that all your hard work paid off. I've said it before, but it just blows my mind that I can make a model on my iPad and then print a physical 3D object. So simple. I'll get to work sanding the support marks. Then wipe off the dust with a wet paper towel and let it dry before moving on to painting. Off camera, I sprayed 2 layers of Mr. Super Clear to prime the surface. Then I'll do a coat of yellowish green on the whole bird. Then I impaled the poor bird on a chopstick to make it easier to paint, and tried to use a watered down green to make a gradient. But that didn't work that great, so I switched to a sponge and just slowly dabbed the colors on to build a gradient. Okay, never mind. I went back and forth between the dark and light color to make a smooth gradient. Then I dabbed a bit of orange around the wings and blended that nicely. Then painted the eyes dark brown, but honestly it just looks black on camera. I also painted the beak. I tried painting the blush with paint, but I didn't really like how it looked, so I rubbed that off with a Q-tip and switched to Pastels. And that looks so much better. The last thing to paint is the leaf and the stem. I glued the pieces together and voila! This little birdie is complete! What do you think? I'm super happy with how this came out, and I had so much fun. I made a whole set of fruit birds. The printing files for the set are up for sale on my website, but the pear bird is available for free. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video and that it was useful to you in any way. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.